What is up, Rapid Attention YouTube? Welcome to today's video. We're going on a rather ambitious journey trying to drive this somewhat low compression, i.e. very low compression, RX8 for a little adventure. We've got to stop at a gas station, which means we have to turn this off and hot start it. Currently, I've been letting it sit here in the driveway before we started filming this video in order to see if it'll hot start before we have to hot start it in public. You know, sometimes these things can get a little shy. You get them around people, they just don't want to start. But here at the Rotary Wizard Rad Ranch, they tend to start. Didn't even have to rev it. We're just gonna shut it right off, let all that fuel that was getting dumped in there just stay in there, and let's see if this thing starts. No deflood. The only upgrade that this car has as far as engine stuff is it has a Black Halo Racing LS coil kit. I do believe it still has an 04 style starter, which is slower. It has all the stock stuff. It's got a stock header, it's got a stock mid-pipe, and it does have a catback, but catback won't help your car start faster. Not a good investment of money if you're buying a low buck RX8. Don't buy an exhaust for it until you've got a good engine. Let's see. We're going to be let down, or the Rotary Wizard hand's going to start this RX8. I'm not going to hit the throttle at all. Come on, girl. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. All right, a little bit of throttle. Come on. Hey, yo. Good job, Blue RX8. No, we're not driving my green one. This is actually a friend of mine's blue one, and it's going to need an engine, as you can tell, very soon. I did, however, park at the top of this hill, my driveway, so that if it didn't start, I could pop start it. And fortunately, the gas station I'm going to stop at has a little hill too, so if we need to pop start it there, we can do that. I'm going to go ahead and insert the clip of the cold start before we just did that. All right, that is completely cold right there. We got all the lights, it's normal RX8 stuff. The nice thing about a low compression RX8 though is still, once you get it started, they tend to run pretty well. And especially if you're looking at buying an RX8, even if it's low compression, okay, it's having some trouble hot starting, you can prove that the car is in good shape aside from the engine just by getting it started and driving it. Most of these old RX8s, I'll say, yeah, they get blamed for having blown up engines, and you're gonna see cars listed for sale that are like, needs apex seals from some jabroni that doesn't know anything about a rotary engine, because a lot of these cars were just sold as normal cars. People bought these cars and drove them like they would a Miata. And unfortunately, you really can't do that once they get to the point in their life where they need some fixins, if you know what I mean. You gotta rev them before you shut them off. You gotta premix. You gotta change your plugs and coils at the same time every time, because weak coils just mean it doesn't like to start. And that just deters a lot of people, and a lot of people don't know how good these cars can be. But if you find one that's for sale, starts but won't hot start, go drive it, go see if it runs, go see how it runs, right? If it pulls all the way through, does it have check engine lights? Is it misfiring? Is the SSV sticking? Are the 6-port actuators working? How are the brakes? You can sort out a reasonably nice car, even if it's low compression, and then make the investment of buying a new engine, and now you've got a really good RX8 chassis. And fortunately, this one's got 200,000 miles. It has some suspension work done to it that it could use a little bit of help in a few of the departments, sway bar in links and some slower control arm bushings, but most of these cars around 100,000 miles are actually in really good shape, suspension wise, brakes wise, wheel bearing wise, and there's no reason to not buy one of them and either swap the engine to an RX8 new engine, swap the engine to something else, or just enjoy the car as like a low compression missile and don't turn it off in front of people so that they don't have to hear how long your car takes to start. That is a beautiful Tacoma, sir. So, if you've ever driven an RX8, they're slow. And a low compression RX8 is even slower. I can tell with this one, it's kind of dropping and laying over a little bit past 7,100. It's definitely laying over past where all the intake valves are opening, so I know that all that stuff's functioning properly, but it's just not making the compression to combust all the fuel and air that's getting shoveled into this thing at 8,000 RPM. And that's reasonably typical of an unhealthy rotary engine up top, is that they're just not working efficiently. My green RX8, when I first got it, it had an oil leak. And the oil leak was actually an oil metering pump line. What the oil metering pump does is it injects oil into your RX8 engine in order to lubricate the apex seals. On my green one, that OMP line was leaking on the front rotor. So when I compression tested my car, it made 60 PSI on the front and 90 PSI of compression on the back. That variation in compression was giving me misfires above 7,000 RPM at the track. And as much as I wished it would have just been something simple, it turned out that I needed to swap the engine. So fortunately, I was able to find a used engine that made decent compression. I slapped that thing in there, and I have been tracking that car ever since. And it is getting a little bit tired after about 15 track days of no mechanical sympathy and some street driving, but that's just par for the course whenever you buy an RX8 to take it to the track, and you're kind of going to treat it like crap, because that's what these things kind of enjoy. That's what I bought the car for, and that's what I'm going to use it for. Now, that engine definitely could have lasted a lot longer on the street and not seeing, 270 degree oil temps and 230 degree coolant temps, but for what I was doing it, the RX8 has been a shredder and a trooper. And that's generally how these cars can be. You can find a low compression one and you can get a decent chunk of miles out of it if you just pay a little bit closer attention, fix a lot of the things around your engine, because these engines will run with 60 PSI compression. Guys, like, compression is not like your battery on your phone, okay? It doesn't just go away over time gradually at the same rate. Compression doesn't just act like a dimmer switch and just constantly go down. What you really have to look out for is sometimes is compression will just flip a switch and it'll be no compression, and that's just not a good day. Fortunately though, with how these RX8 engines are designed with the multi-side port, they tend, once they get to that 80,000 mile range, the amount of heat that gets put into the tips of the rotors because of the multi-side exhaust port really just cooks the apex seal springs, it cooks the side seals, and in RX8 engines, in order to get them to spin this fast, the apex seals are about half as tall as a RX7 apex seal. So it pretty much stops pulling at 7,200. Now that this thing's good and heat soaked, because so am I, driving this thing in maximum power mode with the air conditioning turned off, let's pull into the gas station, top off this tiny gas tank, and see how much gas we burn getting across town. It started at the house, it'll start here. There's only like 5 people here to scare it. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna give this thing the old little rev, okay? The theory behind doing the engine rev before you shut it off is when the key turns off, the injectors turn off. The engine is then gonna turn for a little bit longer, right? With no injectors and no oil metering pump either. So there's no lubrication in it. When your car is low compression and it's inherently easy to flood, doing this allows the combustion chambers to be empty, such that when you start to crank the car and it shoots all the crank pulse fuel, cranking fuel in there to get it started, it doesn't immediately flood it. So I tend to just I don't do this on my cars typically, because I don't like the fact that when you rev it and shut it off, there's no lubrication in the engine for that 6 seconds or less. But it does help in the case of if your car floods all the time. So basically 2,500 RPM, just a little blip of the throttle, shut the key off. Just like that. No sense in taking it up to 4,000 or whatever. The injectors have been shut off for that much time, and let's pump some fuel and see if this thing starts. Oh, habits of driving FDs recently. Closing the door by the window frame. Oh, please leave so the car doesn't get intimidated. Dang it. All right, guys, moment of truth. Does it start? Probably gonna have to give it a little bit of gas to get it to start, but you got this. All right, so the trick for that is giving it about 10 to 15% throttle once it kind of got its speed up cranking. This one does have the slow starter, so an upgrade band-aid for your low compression RX8 is to buy, there is a high torque starter that came on the later model RX8s that you can buy. Bonsai Racing sells an upgraded starter for these, and by that starter, it turns the car over way faster, like 300 RPM cranking instead of 220 RPM cranking. And just spinning it that much faster, it's much like roll starting your car. The car will start with way low compression. How about that? Almost got stranded at the gas station, but we really almost got stranded in my driveway before we even left. Got a speed shift. Up to now, we've just been driving this RX8 on the roads, and I've been telling you all sorts of things about the rotary engine. So let's take a trip to the shop, and I'm going to show you the inside of one of these rotary engines and show you exactly what I've been talking about this whole video as to why these cars end up getting low compression and what you should expect if you do buy one of these and you're going to tear this engine down and hope that you can rebuild it. Back from our little adventure in the RX8 today. Let's look at the inside of one of these engines, or I guess a couple engines that I have up here, RX8 and RX7 alike, and show you the exact differences and why the RX8 engine kind of just fades out of compression once in a while. But ideally you get more luck than, these two engines I took apart, and you have parts that are reusable. So let's start with the RX8 engine and its tendencies to lose compression and where those happen. This is the end of a RX8 rotor that I've cut that I used to clearance side seals. It has a corner seal in it. You can see that this corner seal springs up and down. Much like a piston ring expands to the walls of the cylinder, the rotor itself does not actually touch the housing or the face of the iron. If it does, bad things happen. The springs push the seals into that and float the rotor between them. So this side seal here goes in this groove, right? Same thing. It's got a spring under it, which is this. Hard to see against the blue, but this little wavy spring sits under there. And this side seal springs up and down. The corner seal springs up and down. Your apex seal, we'll use the RX7 one because it's bigger. The apex seal sits in here, and it springs up and down. So this rotor doesn't actually touch anything. Now, what happens to metal whenever it gets super hot? It gets soft. So, if you have a spring that gets super hot, what's going to happen? It's not going to be as springy. So over time, all the excess heat that's concentrated right on the top of your piston, i.e. the tip of this rotor, the face of this rotor, is going to reduce the strength of these springs, in addition to taking an apex seal that, for lack of a new RX8 seal, would be taller, like this one, and it's going to wear it down like this one, short. So, if in combination, your spring is soft, and then the thing that it's pushing on gets shorter, therefore its ability to retain compression is reduced, and you lose compression in your engine. So why do the RX8 engines, one, have way more heat concentrated into here? This is an RX8 iron. Intake ports at the top, the air comes in, gets smashed against the side, spark plugs go off, air comes out the bottom. This is the RX8's exhaust port. Notice it is in the side. That is why this engine is called a MSP, multi-side port, meaning that the intake and exhaust, all the ports are in the side. This is an RX7 housing. An RX7 does not have the side exhaust. It has side intakes and a peripheral port exhaust. You hear the term peripheral port mostly thrown around with intakes, where they take this exhaust or something similar and they use the same style as the intake. Peripheral port intake, peripheral port exhaust, right? The RX7s have this setup. So what does the variation in those two things affect at the tip of the rotor. In an RX8, all of your exhaust heat is concentrated at the sides of the rotor, right around the side seal, the corner seal, the other side seal, and the edge of the apex seal. Whereas in an RX7, all of the heat is concentrated at the center of the rotor, mostly in the apex seal. That causes premature side seal, corner seal failure in these RX8 engines that you wouldn't normally see in an RX7 engine. In addition, you will see here, these are two used apex seals. The very short one is an RX8 apex seal, and this one is an RX7 apex seal. They're both 2 millimeters thick, but the RX8 apex seal starts out way shorter than an RX7 apex seal, which means that as it wears, percentage-wise, like I talked about earlier, it becomes way shorter as a percentage of its overall height than the RX7 seal does, which then drastically affects the spring rate that's designed for both the RX8s and RX7s. These are your apex seal springs right here, and they would rest up against the bottom of your apex seal just like this. And this spring action here, the double springs, is what pushes that apex seal out to ride around the housing. Now, you also see I've got a corner seal here. This is what the corner seal spring looks like. This lovely little dude. I've seen engines where these corner seals come out completely flat. In addition, this is what the actual corner seal is, a little cylindrical piece of metal. The RX8s have a solid metal corner seal insert in there that helps to seal with the spring action of the apex seal. But you will see I also have a broken one. A broken corner seal, your engine will actually run fairly well with broken corner seals, albeit not to tip-top shape, but I've seen engines that are actually running pretty dang good and making, say, 60 to 70 psi compression come out with 6 to 8 broken corner seals. These broken corner seals, as you can see, there is a super thin side of this corner seal, and when one of these plugs falls out or comes apart, etc., the corner seal can break on that thin edge, especially if you're driving the crap out of your car and getting this area super hot. Now, the reason I show all of you this is because a low compression RX8 engine most likely has way better components in it as far as condition to be rebuilt than an RX8 engine that is low on compression on one face, but all the rest of it's good, that's misfiring terribly, one that is locked up. If you have an RX8 engine that is really blown up, where I've been driving down the interstate, car started misfiring, engine shuts off, I pull over, my RX8 broke an apex seal and shattered everything apart. Your rotors in that situation will start to look like these. So these are out of two separate engines. You can see all of the ping pong that's been played inside this engine. You can see here we've got a broken apex seal stuck in the apex seal groove, just split in half. You can see here we've got an apex seal that has no spring because, well, it's jammed in there. This one didn't get too much damage on the sides, but this one came out of an engine that basically wrecked everything. You can see all the grooves here. Looks like an apex seal or a corner seal or something came out of its hole and just, yeah, right here, broken apex seal. Parts went everywhere. This engine ruined the housing, ruined the irons, ruined the rotors, and that engine's fully trashed. So, if you're sitting here like, dang, this guy makes a good argument for buying a low compression RX8, which, honestly, those are the best ones to get because, like I mentioned earlier, you can basically sort out the car and then decide to put an engine in it, just kind of dealing with the low compression engine while you're saving money, etc. Albeit, I wouldn't buy a low compression RX8 as your primary mode of transportation, but at least now you kind of know what's going on inside of your engine. The housings can also be a factor to your low compression because the RX8 housings are a little bit notorious for having some chrome flake. What chrome flake means is that the coating they put on the inside wear surface that the apex seal rides on here will actually flake off. You can see a little bit of it right there. This pair of housings came out of an engine, and these are honestly, that little bit of chrome flake wouldn't quite scare me away from using them, but if your goal for your RX8 is a long-term, nice and reliable method of transportation, you can buy new housings from Mazda, and in the grand scheme of things, They're really not that expensive when you think about the overall money you're investing into your engine rebuild. So, that is the life and driving a low compression Mazda RX-8, plus some data about why your car would be low compression, in addition to some of the promising things about finding a low compression RX-8 that is drivable, not just catastrophically failed. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you want to learn more about these rotary engines, you want to learn how to rebuild these engines, go check out the other videos on the channel. There's plenty of good information, from clearancing side seals to assembling just the rotor before you actually build the engine, to resurfacing housings, the whole 9 yards. We've done quite a few engine rebuilds on this channel. Go check those out. Would love it if you subscribed. You'll be able to see a little hybrid RX-7 and RX-8 engine getting combined together. And in addition, we got a new car in the shop, ready to get this engine ripped out of here. We're actually going to be looking at this engine to see how it held up from 1 year of only premix. So I rebuilt this engine, all new stuff. We ran it in this car for 1 year, only premixing, and we're going to pull this thing back out after about 8,000 to 10,000 miles and see the condition of this engine. So if you're curious on premix, go check out that video. It's most likely the very next one after this, or if you're watching this after it's been uploaded, go back and check it out. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Keep it rad. Yeah, buddy. Let me tell you, if y'all haven't been following along with this Black FD, this thing, yeah, it's a little rough around the edges. Yeah, it lives outside. Yeah, it's a little dirty and, you know, floppy bumper life and all that. Terrible headlights. But dang, these 18-inch NT03s look so good. And that blue FD we had in here before with the 17-inch RPF ones, if that blue FD had these NT03s on it, would have been proper. 18s just fit so much better on these cars. Get excited, guys. I am super stoked to tear this engine down in the next video. Definitely stick around to check it out, because I'm just as curious as you, and I was so fortunate to be able to have a friend of mine that would let me stick an engine in his car just for science. Peace.